Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show. It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
I'll be speaking with John Kitson this hour. You might not have heard of John. He's a 5G awareness campaigner. Interesting man. He's lived in Tokyo. He's taught English there, as far as I can tell. He's going to be in Oldham this coming Saturday. And an old friend of mine, Angie Wright, gave me a shout and said, Richie, you should feature John. Looking forward to that. We'll talk all things 5G. We'll come at it from maybe one or two different angles than we normally do. John Kitson this hour was reading the new Musical Express, because I'm old enough to remember that, the NME, which I think is predominantly read online these days, and they featured an article this week or last week about 5G, because apparently those attending Glastonbury, the Glastonbury Festival this year, or some of those attending it, have been raising concerns about 5G. Because 5G apparently will be in operation at Glastonbury this year, this summer, right? So NME did a story this week. EE, one of the mobile providers in the country, said, don't worry about it, everything is hunky-dory. Now, if you listen to this program regularly, you will remember me reporting about 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago on the Belgian Environment Minister, a woman called Steele from Alt, because she halted a trialling of 5G in Brussels, saying the people of Brussels are not guinea pigs whose health I can sell at a profit. We can't leave anything to doubt. So a pilot project was suspended temporarily. Now, I've been trying to follow that up and see what's happened there. Have they set a new date for the trialling of it in Brussels? But I've not been able to find out too much. Maybe my guest will know more about it than me. Now, Angie Wright, an old pal of mine who's based in Manchester, gave me a shout last weekend and said, Richie, you need to get John Kitson on your programme. He's a 5G awareness activist and he's coming to Manchester this coming weekend. He'll be in Oldham on Saturday. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. His own story is very interesting. He's been teaching in Tokyo. He's an English teacher and he's spent quite a bit of time this year travelling around the country, giving people a different perspective on the environmental and personal health impact of 5G technology. Because as you know, if you're watching Sky or the BBC or ITV News, when they talk about 5G, there isn't any discussion ever about the possible health implications of it. Let's welcome John Kitson to the programme. John is in Torquay, I think. Welcome, John. How you doing?
Hi, Richie. I'm fine, thanks. Nice to speak with you.
Nice to speak with you. Interesting background. You're in Tokyo and you were teaching English there, I believe. Is this where 5G began for you, John? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I had a smart meter installed on my apartment and I started to have sleep problems. And the problem in Japan is that they'll actually install it outside of your flat. They won't actually ask you permission to come in and install it. So I started having sleep problems. So I moved to a place that didn't have a smart meter, started to sleep a lot better. And that's when I started to investigate it. The only other reason was that my mother passed away a few years ago and she had one of these wireless deck phones and it was giving her headaches. I didn't realize it was due to the phone and she passed away from a brain tumor.
Oh, John, I'm sorry to hear that. And there's no doubt that the device, you reckon, played a part in the brain tumour.
Yes, since that occurred, I've actually bought myself an Acousticom 2, which measures radio frequency, microwave radiation, and they give off a lot of radiation, as do the smart meters, as do the cell phone towers, and as do our smartphones.
Wow, John. Well, look, that's so your mum's experience, and a dreadful experience for you, of course. You being in Tokyo, then putting it on the outside of the building. This is a good bit of public service broadcasting now, because I've been looking into your rights as a citizen in the UK when it comes to 5G, and gladly I've discovered that the rental market, and most of us can't do anything but rent, if you do move into a house and you're renting it and there is a smart meter present, you can have it removed. If the landlord says yes, go ahead and have it removed. The provider must take it out at your request once you have the landlord's permission. Now, I understand that to be true, right? This is important because people have been asking me this. Richie, if I rock up to a house, there's a 5G meter there, a smart meter there. If I don't like it, I can have it moved. That is true.
That's correct. There's no legal obligation for you to have one, and you can refuse one. But often the salespeople on the other end of the line will say, look, that they're becoming compulsory now. There's been a lot of false information given to people. They don't have a legal obligation to have one, and they can have them removed. And there's a Facebook page, Smart Meter Health Effects, where Kathy Dowd is diligently educating people on how to get their smart meters removed.
What did you think when the Environment Minister in Belgium, Celine Vermoold, came out and said, we're going to suspend this? This was obviously welcome. I did mention in the introduction, I've not been able to do any follow-up to find out, what's happened in the interim period. It was good news, but it would be interesting now to see what they plan to do, whether they suspend it full stop or whether they start that pilot project in the future. Have you heard anything, John?
Well, I've heard that, in a number of places, there's an article that came out, I think it's called The Dominoes Are Starting to Fall, and it mentioned Brussels, it mentioned Rome, it mentioned Switzerland, and I think this is promising that we're hearing this resistance, but I think we have to keep going, and we shouldn't let our guard down. Absolutely right.
So you came back from Tokyo then, and you've been, what was it like there, John, before we carry on? Because it's a technological dystopian type of place, isn't it? I've never been to Tokyo, but I've known one or two people who've been to the Far East, and they say that Japan, it's an assault on the senses, and it might be several years further down the road in terms of people embracing tech than we are. Is that true?
Yes, I think so. I see more people on their smartphones in the trains. There's no resistance whatsoever to smart meters out there. I tried to go around to the various shops when I found out about their harmful health effects, and people are just not aware of it. There are no groups there like we have here, and there's very high coverage of Wi-Fi. And I was walking around the city with my meter, and I was getting much higher readings than I was in London when I first came back to the UK, which was at the end of 2017.
And your opponents, those who say this is conspiracy theory, scaremongering, this stuff is all safe, one of the things they say is that, look, you go to the World Health Organization, you go to the FCC in America, over here, everybody says that this stuff operates on levels that are not dangerous to human beings, and then they say that there is consensus, but that isn't true. You can tell me, I imagine, of academics around the world at what we would call established universities and colleges who are saying it isn't safe at all. In fact, it could be very, very damaging. So there isn't the consensus that the media would have us believe there is.
Not at all. No, there are various sites, emfscientist.org, where you've got hundreds of doctors and scientists signing a petition against the rollout of electromagnetic radiation. You've got the 5G appeal. Both of these links, are on my site. And basically the health impact, this is one of the most important points to be talking about. And there's a huge, vast amount of information out there. There's a group, EMF Sussex. I went to one of their events. They can be found online. I heard about half a dozen different doctors talking about the health impact of this radiation. And then Martin Powell, who's been very vocal on 5G, Dr. Martin Powell.
Very good stuff. John's website, by the way, is 5gawareness.com. 5gawareness.com. And this coming Saturday in Oldham at 11A Church Lane, the Salt Cellar, which I believe is a lovely venue, the Salt Cellar, starting at 1:30. John will be there giving a talk and then doing a Q&A afterwards. That's The Truth About 5G by John Kitson, and tickets are available at Eventbrite. I'll put links up to this. That's Saturday, 1:30 to 4 p.m, the Salt Cellar, 11A Church Lane in Oldham. And I'm glad there are people like you doing it. And from what I know of Angie Wright and others, the great thing about this is they are getting people into these talks that wouldn't ordinarily listen to programs like this, because that's important, John. Not preaching to the converted, but speaking to people who are completely oblivious, first of all, to this even coming, because I would imagine you meet people who, when you say 5G, they haven't a clue, right?
That's right. Yeah, they just think it's the next generation mobile phone technology. And where the battleground really is getting your average Joe who just doesn't have a clue about this into these venues, getting these events up and down the country. We had over 250, actually it was a sellout, our Buck Fastly event. We had 200 people there. Brilliant. In the hall, 50 people couldn't get in. We had our Totnes event, which almost had 150 people. So we need to get these up and down the country. And if anyone wants to collaborate doing an event, they can reach out to me through my site. I'm more than happy to help them organize an event. But we really need to get this going up and down the country, stress the health impact and also the financial impact on property prices. Because if there are people who maybe they're not bothered about their health, then maybe they'll be bothered about their property reducing in value.
It's funny you mentioned that now. Isn't that interesting? Because I've had it said to me by listeners who've got in touch with me. They've said that they fear that in more underprivileged areas, and I'm a working class boy from a working class council estate and I'm proud of it, I've had people saying to me, Richie, that's where they're going to put a lot of this stuff. People who don't really have a voice. What do you think of that, John?
I completely agree. And actually, Richie, I've been up to Gateshead, and there's a lot of these antennas on the street lamps. Now, I've met a number of people. I met Mark. I went to his court case.
This is Mark Steele, right? Now, isn't it interesting? Mark was on this programme, and we had a very interesting discussion about this. I obviously did the due diligence, got in touch with the council, but they wouldn't come back to me, apart from putting out some notice saying that Mark was telling lies about the boxes or the antenna on the street lights. But he was able to see their claims and raise them because he put information online to show that these things were indeed on the street lights up there.
That's right. I actually went up there with my meter and I detected very high microwaves coming from the antennas on the street lights. So, and I also met a number of neighbors who know Mark personally, spoke with them, and they shared their testimonials of the nosebleeds, the headaches. And, when I first met Mark, I met him at the Ian Kren's event, AV9, and I just wanted to go up there myself, to see what it was about.
See with your own eyes, yeah.
Yeah, because I was aware there was some disagreement online, and I even got in touch with Ingrid Dickinson, who's the founder of BEMRI, which was the organization, this supposed survey that happened. And Ingrid said there was no survey of 5G, and anyone who represents BEMRI, they do not survey 5G or street lamps, and she can be contacted through BEMRI's website. But through the testimonials that I heard and my attendance in court, it seems there's a lot of fabrication coming from the council. And Mark, I've had interviewed Mark and Barry Trower together.
Yeah.
And Barry is totally on board that this is weapons technology that they're rolling out on our streets.
Yeah, Barry's in it. I've known Barry for many years. Give us a brief summary of, before you do, you can have a think about it for a second, a brief summary of Mark Steele's case. Before you do that, I'm going to plug again Saturday, and we've obviously got a lot of listeners in the Northwest. If you are not doing anything on Saturday, pop around to the Salt Cellar on Church Lane in Oldham. John Kitson will be there. It's only $4.50 to get in. All they're doing is covering the venue and covering his travel and that, I would imagine. It's important. Get somebody to go along with you who would never pay attention to independent media or anything like that, and get them to listen into this. That's a Saturday, 1:30 to 4. Eventbrite.co.uk. If you go to eventbrite.co.uk and look for the truth about 5G, you'll find it. You can buy a ticket in advance, and there will be admission on the door. So give us a brief summary of the Mark Steele court case then with Gateshead Council.
Sure. Okay. So I first of all attended his first case with Judge Nolan, where basically there was a sort of injunction being put against him. And the judge was actually very sympathetic to Mark. He was saying, well, Mark has his right to talk about 5G. A big bundle of evidence was given to the judge during the lunch break. And the judge's conclusion was that it was in the public interest and that Mark should still campaign. But he was under great pressure from the council to put a very minor injunction on him. The next court hearing I wasn't able to get to. I'm at the other side of the country, but I managed to get to the appeal hearing against the conviction. So there was a conviction brought against him for breaking the injunction. And I'll just briefly explain what happened there. 2 councillors went to near where he lived, basically on the street where he was living. This was not their ward. And one of them was looking through Mark's window from the roadside. Mark came out, said, "What are you doing?" The councillor then said, I'm scared, I'm calling the police." The police came. The police officer, the male police officer, manhandled Mark into the car. And the female police officer was interviewing Mark's neighbor. And the neighbor was explaining about the health problems they'd been getting from these street lights. The male police officer then shouted to the female police officer, "Don't talk to that woman." And then they took Mark away. Now, they played the police tape back, and there was no shouting coming from Mark whatsoever. The neighbor, Debbie, also stated that Mark was not shouting when she was listening to what was going on from her window. And it looks like a massive campaign against Mark. I believe they desperately trying to shut him up. And they've got his committal hearing, which will be on May the 9th. What
was the injunction? The injunction was on what? He was forbidden to do what? To name the councillors or to speak about the nature of that police visit? What was he basically gagged on?
Okay, so it was gagging him on basically a harassment charge. He was videoing councillors. He was challenging them on 5G. And it was basically a sort of harassment charge as far as I believe.
In the interest of being the devil's advocate now, and I had Mark on, I think this is the first radio program he did, and I liked him. I found him. I found him intelligent, articulate, and engaging. But I'm going to be the devil's advocate here now.
Sure.
Could it be that he didn't box clever? Could it be that, completely motivated by his desire to find out the truth about this, that maybe he did give councillors cause for concern by following them around? I'm just putting that out there. I'm not accusing him of it. I'm just putting it out there. What do you think?
Well, he's a very colourful character. He's got a very strong personality. And I think he's a very sensitive guy, and he's very emotional about this. But I don't believe that it's justifiable for the council to be seeking the sort of direction they're taking in terms of punishing Mark.
Neither do I. Listen, I support everybody's right to ask questions, particularly of elected officials. I suppose I'm just making the point again, covering my arse. Those councillors might say, listen, we were scared. We thought he might have, but we didn't know who he was. We didn't know what he might do. Listen, that's subjective. Like I said, I found him interesting and engaging when I had him on the program, and I share his and your concern about the potentially devastating effects this technology will have on people, and I'm glad that people are speaking up about it. I really am, John. John Kitson is our guest. His website is 5gawareness.com. Check it out. He's in Oldham this coming Saturday. That's at the Salt Cellar, Church Lane in Oldham, 1:30 to 4 p.m. Eventbrite.co.uk for tickets. If you go to eventbrite.co.uk, put in 5G and its dangers, you will directly come to where you can buy a ticket for that. I've had guests on this program talking about, you mentioned Barry Trower, but I've had other people, academics as well, on this show talking about the health effects of it and how the technology works. We've done a lot of that. What can people do, John? Because I hate to be fatalistic, but I think it's just going to go up and it's going to go on. Are we almost beyond the point of trying to prevent it happening and accepting that it will happen and then trying to work from there? Or do you still think that there is work to be done and could be done that might prevent this thing from actually ending up on our streets, these transmitters? What do you think?
Yeah, I believe it's preventable. It's just ramping up the awareness. And this is absolutely important. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff going out on social media, which of course, why the censorship is coming in. But I believe literally knocking on doors. One thing I do, if anybody wants to organize an event, I've got a background in sales and networking. Another thing I worked out as a headhunter in Japan. I'm very sort of consistent. I'll do something again and again to get something. And that's where we went with the Buckfast Lee event, where we filled it up. And I believe if there's enough people motivated up and down the country to do their own events, you can get, 2,500 leaflets done for £45, knocking on doors.
Yeah, good stuff, Mark. Yeah. Excuse me, John. Yeah.
Up and down the country, and also protecting yourself. So Wi-Fi devices in your house, get it all wired up with Ethernet cables, holding your phone away from your head, taking simple steps like that for the meantime, and just raising awareness about 5G.
That's really important, because you are going to attract inevitably to Oldham some people that are already aware of this. And that's equally good and equally frustrating for you, because they know, because they've been on 5gawareness.com. What you need them to do then is to go away. Not go away satisfied that, well, I knew all along. John Kitson is right. That's no good. You've got to get off your arse. And if it's only a few quid to get 2,500 leaflets, get them and go and knock on bloody doors.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Activism. It's no good going, yeah, great, met John Kitson, lovely. No, you've got to do something then.
Yeah, making local groups, just having your own groups and even doing your own events. That's fine. Like, we have a local group here in Totnes, where I'm living at the moment, that meet once a month. And then after the Buckfast Lee event, there's an independent group that's headed up by some other chap there. And they're having their own meetings once a month about steps that they can take, action that they can take. And then the more people that are aware, the more pressure lands on those people in charge, and I think that's key.
Here's a question for you. I ask this to everybody I meet along the road, and this is the first time we've met, so I'll ask you the question. You've worked in the world, in I call it the regular world, as I have, and you've come out of it, and you're doing what you're doing. I always ask people who, get into activism over an issue like you are doing with 5G, you're a completely different person now than you were a couple of years ago, even from the time that your mother passed away. Yeah. How do you deal with that kind of transformation? Because we go about in life thinking things are okay, and people are okay, and the police are okay, and politicians are okay. Then all of a sudden your world comes crashing down around you. Has that happened to you in that kind of transformative time, that time between being in Japan and being here?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the more research I did to find out that, the world was not quite as I thought it was, and the amount of lies that were being told through the education system, through the mass media, it made me want to do something to change that system, And I think we have so much power that we don't realize. And, if we're on our deathbed looking back and thinking, what did we do to change the state of affairs? What did we do with our lives? And I just think that's extremely important, to have a mission and just to get more in touch with our heart, about doing what's right and making the world a better place, doing what we can.
Good stuff. I've had a question from a listener onto it. There's been quite a few tweets on this actually today. Chris asks this. It's a bizarre question. No offense whatsoever to Chris, but he asks, Richie, ask John if Japan has 7G. I wouldn't imagine it does. I've never heard of 7G. Does that mean anything to you?
No, I don't think so. I don't even think we'll get to 7G if we don't stop 5G.
Yeah, the implications for that serious. Yeah. Let me just scroll, because quite a few tweets came in there. Okay. David tweets, the trouble is the masses of people are oblivious to the fact that the PRC want us dead or under complete surveillance. They believe our government loves us and would never harm us. We are ice skating up a hill, says David. A lot of talk as well on Twitter about the Internet of Things and how 5G will better enable those who want to surveil us to surveil every aspect, or to survey or to watch every aspect of our lives, from what we eat, what we cook, what we store in our refrigerators and whatever. It's kind of a total agenda, this, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's, they're putting chips in lots of different products. I mean, we're even encouraged to chip our cats and dogs, and we're fined for not doing so. It's ridiculous. And I think this is where, having critical thinking comes in. Not necessarily doing everything that we're told, and actually research what we're doing, before actually carrying this out. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things happening, and we've just got to use our common sense.
Couple of tweets. There was another tweet from David, which is very interesting. I'll read it in a second. Before that, Ewan Cooper tweets, Richie, I was back in Perthshire this month and noticed a lot of new LED streetlights with 5-inch green antennas in the high streets of quite a few of the towns I drove through. It's the same in Sussex where I live. It's all set up to go. So LED streetlights with 5-inch green antennas. Does that mean anything to you, John?
Well, what I've learned from Mark, and I don't have a technical background, but there's been this argument, are these antennas 5G? Now, the main definition of 5G from what I've learned from Barry, Trower and Mark is that 5G stands for fifth generation. So it means densification. It doesn't just mean higher frequencies, but it means more of the lower frequencies. And the antennas are operating on 868 megahertz. And it's basically, we're getting a Wi-Fi antenna, an antenna giving off microwaves on every single street lamp. And of course, the thing is with the antennas, 5G doesn't travel well. So my understanding of it is that if it's at this lower frequency of 868, it can then get through into our houses. Whereas the higher frequencies don't travel well and they have more problems. So they have to incorporate these lower frequencies, that more of the 2G, more of the 3G, more of the 4G for 5G to ride on top of. Now, that's although I'm not a technical expert, that's my understanding from Mark, and I combine that with Mark and Barry from what I've learned.
Good stuff. Phil in Florida, pal of ours, asks, could John create, or somebody associated with him, a TR fold flyer? I think he means a triple fold flyer, like a letter you might get in the post, that could be downloaded and printed by listeners to hand out. That's a good question. You've got the website 5gawareness.com. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea, as Phil has suggested, for you to put a downloadable flyer there. What do you think, John?
I'll be getting that done and uploaded within the week.
Good man.
I'll be putting a bunch of flyers up there.
Fantastic.
I've already got one prepared, just haven't uploaded it yet because the site's still been in development, but I'll be getting that done within the week.
Great idea. And that speaks to David's tweet, because David said, is there a way to get a science-based argument on the dangers of it out to us in layman's terms, so we could print it off and get them out there? Well, that's the key to it, isn't it? Making that flyer.
You can contact me via my contact page, and I can happily email him the flyer, or anyone who wants to get a flyer, but I'll put it up on the site as well.
Good stuff. Operation Mockingbird on Twitter says, Richie, I suspect 5G won't be good for bees and other insects that are vital for the ecosystem. Well, we know there are massive problems with bee colony collapse in the UK, because Oxford University 4 years ago said that dementia is a massive problem for bees. We speculated on this programme that might be down to aluminium exposure, and that might be down to aerosol spraying, but a lot of people don't agree with that. But of course it's not going to be good, not just for us, John, but for every other creature on this planet. Birds as well. I mean, we're surrounded. We're in South Manchester. Every bird you can think of, beautiful birds, small and large, they're going to be affected by it, surely.
Yep. Barry's talked about this at length, actually. He was stating that in 1997, experiments were carried out in Russia on 5G on humans and animals. They cause severe neurological and physiological harm and permanent damage to the immune system, increased bacterial growth, bone and blood disorders, inflammation and enzyme damage. 5G was rolled out in Vienna more recently, and they've reported the residents have had nosebleeds, cardiac pain, vomiting, fatigue, and flu-like symptoms. But yeah, huge rise in neurological problems, insects, trees, all of this will suffer dramatically under 5G, as it is already being affected by the current microwave radiation.
No doubt. John Kitson is our guest. Just before we let John go, it's 5gawareness.com. That's his website. He will be in Oldham this coming Saturday afternoon. That's May 4th. Great day for Star Wars fans, of course. Between 1:30 and 4 o'clock. It's at Church Lane, 11A Church Lane in Oldham. The Salt Cellar is the venue. Only $4.50 for a ticket. Eventbrite.co.uk is where you'll find the link. I will put that exact ticket link on Twitter in a minute, and I'll pin it to the top of the page, and I'll leave it there for the duration of the programme. If you want to get it on Twitter, 1:30 to 4 o'clock. Bring somebody with you who hasn't a clue about this and let them sit through. John will be speaking. There will be a Q&A there. William is in Scotland. Wildfires, John, 5G and wildfires, what do you think?
Well, yeah, that's not my area of expertise, but I wouldn't be surprised, to be quite honest. I think 5G, I mean, basically, we look at microwave ovens and how they heat up food. So this microwave radiation is going to be heating us up and heating absolutely everything else up. So, but yeah, I haven't looked into wildfires extensively. I've mostly been looking at the health impact on people. So that's not an area of my expertise. But Mark or Barry would be able to answer that in a more detailed manner.
Well, thanks for coming on the programme, John. I appreciate that. I enjoyed having you on. I do urge our listeners in the Northwest, or even if you're in the Northeast, if you can make it to Oldham this coming Saturday, the Salt Cellar, 1:30 to 4, eventbrite.co.uk. Yes, mate, go ahead, jump in there. Yeah.
I was going to say, I've got my YouTube as well. It's 5G Awareness, all one word.
Brilliant, yeah, that's right. I was on the channel today, the YouTube channel, youtube.com. Just look for 5G Awareness, all one word. You'll find the channel. Subscribe to it there. 11A Church Lane, this coming Saturday, 1:30 to 4. There's The Truth About 5G by John Kitson. I'm going to put the link on Twitter this minute, and I'll pin it to the top of my Twitter page. All the best, John. Good luck with the event on Saturday, and I'm sure we'll speak again in the near future. Thanks for your company today.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Richie.
Enjoyed it. Thanks, John. Very important stuff, this. That was John Kitson there. The Truth About 5G. I'm going to say it again. Saturday, the Salt Cellar, Oldham, 1:30 to 4 p.m. All the details at eventbrite.co.uk for tickets, but I'm sure you'll get in. If you don't manage to grab a ticket, I'm sure you'll get in on the door on Saturday there. Thanks to Angie Wright, who's based in the northwest of the country. In fact, Angie is a Mancunian. She's a Manc. I'm not sure if she's red or blue, but she's a Manc, and Angie's involved in putting on these events up here. I like it. I like these events. You're not asking people for an arm and a leg. You're not screwing them to the wall, asking them for a lot of money. And what you're asking people to do then is take the information that you've gleaned and take it out to your neighbourhood. Okay, so you put a letter in somebody's letterbox and they might think that you're stark raving mad. They might think you're a lunatic. Fair enough. 3 doors down or 4 doors down, somebody might think, well, hang on a second, this is very interesting. I'm going to look into this a bit further. Don't forget, in Belgium earlier this month, the Environment Minister, Céline Vermaat, halted a what would you call it? A pilot project, a pilot rollout of this in Brussels. She said she's not convinced that it's healthy and that, I quote, the people of Brussels are not guinea pigs whose health that I can sell at a profit. We cannot leave anything to doubt, she said there. Some of you might say it's amazing she's still in a job.